All right, good day, everybody. I'm Mike Schubert, and this is my final project presentation in educational technology for the fall of 2016. And over the course of the next few minutes, we'll take a look at the buzzometer. Our agenda is to talk a little bit about the motivation for this project. I'll take you through a demo so you can see the results and talk about areas for future improvement. Project really centers around the ideas of classroom management, and it's really something that's straightforward when you have a small number of students. You can look and see who's making eye contact, who's not, are they getting the material that you're presenting, how are they doing? With a small number, it's very straightforward. Even as the class size begins to grow, you still can keep that personal level of contact and know how each individual student is doing. As lectures grow, you get a sense, maybe not for the names, but at least the faces, and you can tell whether they're engaged or if people stop showing up or things like that. But when you have the OMS program and something that is just a massive open community of students that are here to learn, how do you keep track of how they're doing? And that's really the motivation for this project, was to determine how things are going for both the class level and an individual. And this is important across the spectrum of Georgia Tech's OMS program. First and foremost, when a new offering comes online, you want to know whether it's translated well from the classroom to the online format. Sometimes faculty and staff will change, and maybe that subtle change impacts the efficacy of what's being delivered between semesters. And finally, be able to measure the outcomes as new cohort demographics are admitted to the program, and people with a less computer science background. As more and more join the program, it will be important to be able to measure in general, how it's going for folks. So how can we determine how things are going for a class that's at the OMS scale? And the answer is by mining Piazza and ultimately measuring the buzz of the content of the posts. And at this point, we'll jump into a live demo and show off the work that I've performed this semester. So I've launched the program, and first step was to enter my username and password, and I really didn't want to share my password with everyone, so we've skipped forward. And at this point, the script has gone out and has interrogated Piazza to figure out all of the classes that I have access to. Obviously, if I'm a TA or a professor, I'll have access to all the classes I teach. As a student, I've taken a number of classes, and so I have a number at my disposal to choose from here. Since this is the EdTech class, I'll go ahead and choose that one out of the list. And the next question it asks is, on what date did the semester begin? And I happen to know that it started on August 15th of 2016. And it asks this so that as it builds the picture of sentiment over time, it can actually determine which week these posts have taken in, and that way an instructor can align what was going on from the syllabus in a given week with how people felt about it. So we hit go, and then it says, okay, it's going to go ahead and retrieve all the posts for that class, and it's going to begin iterating across it. I have a current limit in of 1,000 for sanity, but if there's classes that have more than 1,000 posts in it, that number can be changed. So as you can see, this takes a little bit of time. It's grabbing each post and analyzing the text for sentiment, and this one's going to be a little while, so we'll use the magic of technology. Okay, so the program has caught up. It's read all the posts out there and categorized on a weekly basis the sentiment of posts over the entire semester. So for purposes of guiding you reading this, we have the weeks of the semester across the bottom, and we have the scores of the posts that occur throughout those weeks. A 0 score would be something that is very negative. The entire post used negative words and phrases and might be indicative of a student or even an entire class in trouble. A 1.0 is very positive, very favorable words and phrases, maybe aha moments and things like that, or at the end of the semester, saying what a great class it was, etc. On a weekly basis, we have the median lines. These are the red lines that give a sense for where the middle of the road average of sentiment is throughout the class. And in the case of educational technology, this fall remained very positive week after week after week. We have the range in the box plot that show that 75% of the students are falling in. And you think about these first few weeks, there was uncertainty about how assignments should be structured, or how they were to be graded, or how did peer review work. And what you see is this trend over time where those issues kind of went away, and once the class hit its stride, really started falling in, probably had a milestone in here with a proposal due or some feedback due, but as folks fell into stride and really got a sense for how the class works, we see overall the trend improve. Even though the median has always been really positive, we've brought folks up throughout the course of the class. If you had seen things like it actually drop, it might be an indication that the class as a whole was not getting something or understanding what was to be performed. And at that point, a professor or an instructor could come in and either target the class as a whole to help intervene and improve communications or format or something along those lines. Or, if it was the case that we still had individuals struggling along the way, data could further be analyzed to see who was really having problems, what types of problems were people having, and then either target the person and help them individually, or look at the categories of problems people were having and really address those issues. So really neat look over the course of a semester here, and this is a real live view of our class. So hopefully you enjoyed that look behind the scenes at the overall sentiment of this class that we've been a part of, and you can imagine the application of this across all the other classes within the OMS program. Now, it's not perfect by any sense of the imagination, because I only had several weeks to really work on it. So there's some room for future improvements here, and some of those are pulling out words and phrases that received low scores and actually highlighting those for the person running the program. So this would allow them not just to see that perhaps the sentiment of the class is declining, but also look at the frequency of certain terms or phrases to see if as a whole there's something that's confusing that they could target to help improve that. Adding logic to include or adjust or even remove comments and answers on posts is something that I think will become important, as right now posts from instructors are included. The commentary that takes place on a given post could also sway things one way or another, and perhaps not be as germane to the overall sentiment in the class, because digression takes place. Other things end up being talked about, and folks say thank you and things like that, and may tend to sway the score either very positive or very negative, and in a different way than the original post really intended. And finally is adding a dictionary capability so that we could tune it based on the domain of a class, because ultimately the language used in a computer science class will be different from the language and phraseology that would be used in an English literature class. So perhaps based on the terminology that's used in those two very different coursework domains, there may be a different sense of positive and negative sentiment. So with that, I thank you for your time and attention, and hope you enjoyed taking a look behind the scenes at my project. Thanks again.